This is a reflection for Sunday, the 13th of March 2022. That's the second Sunday of Advent. I'm Nicholas Henshall, I'm the Dean of Chelmsford, and these reflections come out of the last few weeks, based on the readings for today. And I've called them Pause, Reflect, for reasons that I hope become clear. First, some words from today's Psalm, Psalm 27. The Lord is my saving light. Whom should I fear? God is my fortress. What should I dread? When the violent come at me to eat me alive, a mob eager to kill, they waver, they collapse. Should battalions lay siege, I will not fear. Should war rage against me, even then I will trust. One thing I ask the Lord, one thing I seek, to live in the house of God every day of my life, caught up in God's beauty, at prayer in his temple. And then a reflection. In April 1989, 97 people were killed in the Hillsborough Stadium disaster. At that time, my sister was a community worker in Kirby in North Liverpool, a large overspill estate. It's where Z-Cars was filmed, if that's a memory for any of you. Many of the dead came from my sister's patch. She spoke to me late that night of her sense of anger and helplessness. She'd just been round to see the newly widowed mother who'd watched her son die on the screen at Hillsborough. My sister said simply, what could we do? What could we say? We could only sit and hold her hand in silence. What could we do? What could we say? We could only sit and hold her hand in silence. Over the last 3 weeks, those words have come back to me again and again as we have watched the tragedy of the Russian assault on Ukraine unfold. I'm a real news addict, but I'm already exhausted by a 24-hour news cycle that simply reports events. Of course we need to be informed, but rolling news gives us information overload with no space to reflect. That space to reflect, well, that's what's really important in our own lives and in our corporate life together. Space to reflect rather than lots of undigested information. Space to reflect, whether in the personal sphere or in the leadership of a nation. The Bible is deeply instructive here. In the book of Job, when disaster strikes, Job's immediate response is to sit with his friends in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. In a similar way, Ezekiel's response to catastrophe is solitude and silence as the only place to start working out how to respond. And of course, again and again, starting in the very first chapter of Mark's Gospel, Jesus seeks out solitude and silence, both as a regular spiritual practice and in particular times of challenge and change. Perhaps most pertinent to the present context is the often quoted line from Psalm 46, "Be still and know that I am God." The verse is emphatically not an invitation to silent withdrawal. Psalm 46 is in fact all about battle, war, and desolation. It is in the middle of all of that that God invites us to be still and pay attention. Early on in the Ukraine conflict, as the Russian army continued its advance, a radio interviewer was pressing the former head of the Secret Intelligence Service MI6 for his reaction. And he simply said to the radio audience, "Pause. Reflect. Pause. Reflect. Yes, yes, exactly." And in a similar way, when St Aidan of Holy Island saw the Danes attacking Bamborough Castle, his prayer was simply, "Lord, see what they are doing." A prayer of paying attention, taken from Psalm 142. The great French priest Michel Coist, who spent most of his life living and working among the urban poor, suggested that Christians needed to learn to see in a whole new way. He begins one of his most famous prayers with these words: "I would like to rise very high, Lord, above my city, above the world, above time. I would like to purify my glance and borrow your eyes. I would then see the universe, humanity, history, as the Father sees them." There you have it. I would like to purify my glance and borrow your eyes. To see clearly, to pay exquisite attention, again and again. That is Jesus' invitation to us, that we learn to see. In the Gospels, Jesus heals many people, but has a particular focus on healing the blind. Indeed, in his very first piece of teaching in Luke chapter 4, he identifies recovery of sight for the blind as a key part of his mission. And one of the longest chapters in John's Gospel is entirely devoted to the healing of a man born blind. And whilst these in one sense are healings like any other, in every case, Jesus' healing of blind people in the Gospels is always a rebuke to those who think that they can see, particularly the religious elite. Jesus is constantly inviting us to develop our capacity to see clearly. In today's Gospel reading, Jesus laments over Jerusalem as he prepares for what awaits him there. Jerusalem has failed to pay attention, to notice what God is doing. God invites us to see salvation, to see the glory of God revealed unambiguously in the crucified Messiah. Just a year on from Hillsborough, I found myself burying one of the first casualties in the First Gulf War. He was a young man from Blyth in Northumberland, where I was curate. The town devastated by the closure of its 15 coal mines, he, like many other young men, had joined the army as one of the only options available. As his mother said to me, he never expected to get killed. How we were to minister in such tragedy. Words of comfort and reassurance were wholly inadequate. All we could do was sit and hold her hand in silence. And a prayer for Lent in expectation of Easter. Lord our God, you alone do we worship. Only your word gives life. Sustain your church in its Lenten journey. When we walk through the desert of temptation, strengthen us to renounce the power of evil. When our faith is tested by doubt, illumine our hearts with Easter's bright promise. We ask this through Christ, our deliverance and hope, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, holy and mighty God, for ever and ever.